Berkeley Mills Ballpark was established in 1949 as the home field of the Berkeley Spinners, the baseball team of the Berkeley Mills textile plant. Organized in 1948 at the height of baseball's post-war popularity, the Spinners played as part of the Western North Carolina Industrial League, composed of teams drawn from workforces of various regional industrial plants. The ballpark sits today off of Balfour Road as home to a rich history of baseball in Hendersonville. The mill was originally established as Balfour Mills in the 1920s by Ellison Adger Smythe, producer of calico cotton cloth. By the time International Cellucotton Products Company purchased the mill, the surrounding village included more than 100 mill houses. The Spinners played their first season at the fairgrounds, or the Hendersonville High School field. The Spinners outperformed a competing semi-pro team, the Hendersonville Skylarks, and were consequently forced to find a new home field. A hillside near the mill was selected for the field to be located in a park-like setting. After the site was prepared, Berkeley Mills employees provided most of the construction labor. With its covered wooden grandstands, electric lights, and concession facilities, the ballpark was a favorite amongst the Industrial League. Berkeley Mills was able to attract prize baseball talent with their superior field, winning 3 league championships in 4 years. Nearly 20 years and 3 baseball leagues later, the Spinners disbanded, but the ballpark would live on. Berkeley Mills Ballpark has been home to many teams in the decades since, including the Hendersonville All-Stars, Brock's Bombers, the Hendersonville Stingrays, and the Sportsman Bombers. The Western North Carolina Independent Baseball League hosted games there, as did Senior League and Babe Ruth Baseball. The park was donated to the City of Hendersonville by Kimberly-Clark Corporation in 2008 and added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2016. On September 16, 2017, a reunion in celebration of the park was held. Many former players and their families attended. We hope you enjoy these interviews and video of the dedication.
I was one of the first outside ball players they hired in 1947 in November. And they was having a ball club the next year. And I'd played 2 years in the Industrial League year before, prior to that at Green River Mills. And they came out and offered me a job at Kimberly-Clark here to play baseball for them the next year. And it was a 20-cent raise an hour, so that was pretty good money back then. You know, especially since around after the war, I had I came over here and we had we didn't do too well that first year, did we?
Third place, I think.
Huh?
Third place.
Third place, I think. But I remember when they first started talking about getting a team in the Industrial League, one of the other teams at the meeting said they didn't think we could furnish the competition. Well, that was an incentive for us. And anyhow, the next year after that, we did pretty good. We won, I don't know how many pennants and playoffs, but my 11 years with them from 48 to 60, 50 through 59, we had some good ball clubs, which I was just fortunate to be one of them. Nothing special, but.
What position did you play?
I played center field and the other outfields. We had 2 or 3 other real good outfielders, and I moved into the infield a few times. We had Noah Good, who became a manager there for a couple, 3 years. Then we had Frank Pack. Man, I'm getting old. Bobby Sparks was a right fielder. He was a great one. And as I look back, I can think of the names of the people, but there'd be 3 or 4 people in different positions over the years. I was thinking about it, but Well, this particular Western North Carolina Industrial League, we stayed there, how many years?
6 years.
6 years in it, and it finally got down to a 4-team league, and they started looking for more competition, so we moved to a league in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and around it, and we won it the next year, and the league folded up, and we moved to Greenville, South Carolina area, and the Western Carolina down there, and did pretty good down there. And we would play anybody that would give us a game. I mean, we played some good competition. Fort Jackson, when they had quite a few Major League Baseball players on their team. We would play anybody we could get a game with. Well, we split with Fort Jackson, but they beat us down there mainly because I made an error in the outfield. But we lost to them, but then we beat them back here, beat them up here. Tip Massey hit was it a triple? A triple and knocked in the winning runs, and Tip was a great ball player. He was, and a fine gentleman as you've ever met. We had good people. We had, if I started to name them, it'd take 15 minutes to name them. For me personally, I remember, I think it was 1954, was it, that we opened up here, and Mayor Edwards was out here, and they put it on WHKP. Was their first game to air for us, and I led off our half of the first inning and I hit a home run.
That was 1953.
1953, and then later on I doubled and Frank Pack knocked me in, and that was our scoring. We beat them 2-0. But that was, we all had good games. I mean, off and on. I usually hit well in a playoff. I don't know why, but I would get a lot of good hits in the playoff. I know one year we beat Dunedin in the playoffs, and I'd gotten a couple of hits that had beat this boy. And the next year we opened up and with them, and the first 2 pitches, he knocked me down. The manager jumped up and started hollering at him, and I said, "Be quiet. He's just a wild." I didn't want to really get hit by that boy because he threw it pretty hard. We were very loose. I can remember one occasion we went down to, I guess it was Saxonville. We were playing an exhibition game, and the catcher had been down in Columbia with Ernie White's team, and he had come back, and he was the athletic director at that place, and he was catching. And our first baseman was on, Francis Korn, our third baseman, was at bat. The guy throws one high and inside, it hits Francis, knocks his cap off, goes over a little backstop they had there, and the first baseman sat there and said, "That a boy, Francis, anything for the team." He said, that guy just sat down and started like, "Said that you beat a bunch that loose." But just a few things like that. We were loose. We enjoyed playing, and we didn't fear anybody. We had some great ball teams. I would say that in the early 50s, we were about as strong as any semi-pro team you'd find around. We had great pitchers. We had my brother Ed, and Higgins Duncan, James Hoot, Billy Holden, Mac Mullen, boy from Asheville, pitched for the Tourists. And then we had our ace was Mal Millette. If Mal Millette got his rest, he would stack some bats for you. He was just unbeatable nearly. Bobby Sparks and I were good friends up until he passed away a few years ago. And I'm about the only one living of the original bunch, you know, that we had. I guess I don't know of any. One or two of them has physical problems, and of course I myself, I'm legally blind. But we moved several of the boys from down and played at Green River Mills in the Industrial League the year before. We had Clarence Stansel lived here, and he played with us at Tuxedo down at Green River Mill. We had Link Drake, Clyde Peak. He played a year with us. He was a coach at Etowah. We had Buddy Stepp. Golly, I can't name them all. I'm getting a little old. You know?
And Ed also.
Huh?
Ed.
Ed, my brother, yeah, and myself. And I never regretted that I stayed with Kimberly Clark here for 35 plus years before I retired. Then I did 30 years in golf. But I've had a great life, great life. Baseball was about the only thing going. And I will say I spent 4 years in the Navy. I was in when they bombed Pearl Harbor and put on a destroyer and sent to the Pacific, and I did over 3 years on 2 different destroyers in the Pacific theater. And that wasn't fun. And when all of us came home, you know, people always said, you guys don't talk about the war. Well, everybody was at that. What was it to talk about? You know, you wanted to forget that. So we all played baseball. They had a city softball league there in town, and we played in it. And some of those guys were at the same place I was. I never knew it till after they died, and I read the obituaries. They just didn't tell you. It was. It was a real good era for baseball. When television came in, everything just started going down. People would stay home and watch television, watch a Major League Baseball team. So, and to be honest with you, people started getting old and they got tired of it. It got other sports. You got football, high school football, high school baseball, and there's all kind of athletics going on then.
1961, I had played for Piedmont in the same Western Carolina League for 8 years, since I was a junior in high school. And I was working on the third shift a lot, and I finally got tired of it, and I said, well, I'm going to just quit and go somewhere else. So I got another job, but the closer to the season came, I wanted to play baseball. So I had talked to Tip Massey, was one of the players on Berkeley's team back then. We used to made good friends with him while we were playing against each other. And Tip told me one day, said, Jerry, if you ever want to come to Berkeley, said, let us know, we'd love to have you. So I got to thinking about that in those days. So I called Tip, and he set me up with Ray Slider. Ray called me, and next thing you knew, I was up here. I was married with a daughter. She was 3 years old. I lived in Piedmont, South Carolina. I never moved up here, but I all the games that we played except Clinton was in Greenville. All the teams that we played were in Greenville, so I got to go back and forth home a lot. A lot of times we'd play down there and I'd stay and come back the next day. And matter of fact, when I first got here in March, I think it was pretty cold. And me and Norman Green rented a room over in Hendersonville until it got warm. And then they give us permission to live in the visitors' dressing room. We lived there for a month or so, I guess. And then later on, I got the opportunity to house sit for a couple that was going to California for 2 months. And so we did that for the rest of the summer. And I really enjoyed being up here. A lot of good memories. But and I think most of the guys that I played with have probably passed away. I don't know. I wish I did know, but I don't know. You know, I don't remember a whole lot about the year I played here. I know I started out playing second base. Tip Massey was older. He was probably 10, 12 years older than me. I was 25 at the time, and Tip had been in and out, hurt or something wrong with him. Well, anyway, I played second, and then Tip came back. Tip was the second baseman, so they moved me to third, and I played third for a while, and then later on, they moved me to the right field. I even played shortstop one game, I think. So, you know, I could play most anywhere. But I don't remember a whole lot about that year. I do remember one thing that happened when I played with Piedmont. I think it was in 1958 or 9, maybe 60. And I was a little guy. I didn't weigh 150 pounds probably. And but I hit 2 home runs up here one night, and hit the third one against the wall for a double or a triple. I don't remember, but that stands out in my mind. I also played for Piedmont. A manager was named Earl Wooten, and I don't know whether you ever heard of Earl or not, but he was a great man, a great baseball player, basketball player. He could do it all. And Earl had got suspended for arguing with umpires, and when he got suspended, you had to sit out 2 or 3 games. And that night that I hit the 2 home runs, he was in the stands that night, and he called me over and he said, Jerry, if you do that every night, I won't play another game. But that's about all I can remember. But it was a good time. It was a good time. I know I done little odd jobs around here when I was here, and I think I made $1.50 an hour for 8 hours a day. I'd cut the grass, line off the field sometimes and do that. Even one night they had a little carnival or something here, and they wanted somebody to watch the park, see if any vandalism was going on, and I built me a bonfire right outside the wall there and stayed here all night long. And got some good memories, I really do.
Well, we started out over here in 1970 and played through 76, and then it seemed like the softball kind of took over as the people started, you know, different likes and dislikes. But we had some outstanding ball games over here. There's about 6 teams in that league that year, and we played on Saturday night and Sunday afternoon. We had played two games, 72 and 74 maybe, with the Indianapolis Clowns, touring team from like Globetrotters, and that had a midget playing with them, and that was quite an experience. And we've got pictures over here on the wall. People can see where some of the things we did, but the biggest thing we had self-sponsors, and the Hendersonville team, most of our own sponsoring, but we just had good country people, and 1 or 2 had played in the minor leagues, but Wayne Fletcher and maybe one of the others, I'm not sure, but but Mr. Epperson kept the grass mowed for us. If it rained or whatever, we could always figure he'd have that grass mowed for us. And Berkeley was just super to work with. It wouldn't want to have been no better for the whole thing. But we had several players, and they stayed together. What was nice, if you had 12 on a team, you'd have maybe 11 by every game, and you can pretty well count on. There wasn't many that came and went. In other words, once they started playing, they stayed all summer. And it was just this special time for us because it was something to do on the weekends. Back then, there wasn't a great deal of things going on, but our wives, the three of our wives worked in concession stands, and I guess you might say, when all the players that came, and the older players come to watch us play. And at one time when we played the Clowns, this whole ballpark was full. We had about 1,300 people in the stands and out on the banks and stuff when we played them. So that was probably the biggest crowd we had. But one game we played that wasn't at Berkeley, we had down in South Carolina. We had down there and took 9 players down there, and 2 of them got hurt, so we ended up with 7 and still beat them. So, but we've that's about all I can think of right now.
Durham Bulls.
Huh?
You played the Durham Bulls?
Yeah, Durham Bulls, and what else did you think
A
of?
bunch of fellows that come down from majors.
Yeah, some of them from majors that come down from minor leagues and played. So Terry Bell was one of the ones, and well, Morris had cut up, and we had Tom Ward cut up, Dean Epson. Well, the biggest part of them was pretty well cut up. They enjoyed what they're doing, and they loved to cut up with one another and the other players also. And it was just a joy, fun time to play on Saturday night and Sunday afternoon. And once in a while you could see rain coming across Stony Mountain, and we'd have to get out and get the rain off the ball field where we could continue playing and stuff. But everybody pitched in to help do that, but the wives all helped participate and to help anything could to get it to going. And the Bernice Jones and Betty Justice, and who was the other one? Morris, who was the other one? Gene Ward, and some more of them help in the concession stand. So it's just a family type thing, and we just everybody look forward to coming over here because it's just a enjoyable time, and we miss it. I do, but I watched the Berkeley Spinners when I was in high school come over. When the wife, after I got married, come over here and watched them a game or two, and they had some outstanding ball players back then, and we'd enjoyed coming and watch them. So that's part of where I got started, I guess, over here. But the ballpark people are so good. They put in, with GE's help, put in some new ballparks, lights and stuff to help them keep things going. And this is probably one of the fewest that's left in the Southeast, and I think it's something for the county to be proud of. I really do.
I come over here and played with them after I got married, and I had 2 kids. One of them was Dean Jones. Everybody knows Dean. He was a principal at West here the last few years, and he's retired now. But I played quite a few years with them. I normally played the infield because I had a bad arm and couldn't throw the ball that good. Played a little outfield, but mostly infield. But I played with Terry Bell, Tom Ward, Dean Ward, and Dean Epperson, all those boys, Tony McMurray and them. We had a pretty decent team. We played the Indianapolis Clowns a few times. We played a donkey ball game a couple of times just to raise money for the team.
to be able to travel. And we had a lot of fun. And I see some of the old players around every once in a while, and we talk a little bit about it. But our kids was raised here in the park. I had a daughter and a son. Ellison had a daughter and a son. Both our sons played baseball all the way up through Little League, plumb to the high school level, and all of them was pretty decent. But they got out there and played while we played. They'd get out there at 10, 11-year-old and catch line drives off of these men. It hit them hard. And we had a lot of fun while we was doing it. And then later on, when baseball quit, I started playing softball. I played downtown, Patton Park, with the Berkeley Mill team. Berkeley Mills had a softball team, and we played downtown and won a few tournaments down there, a few games down there. Then we moved out to Jackson Park in 74 when they started Jackson Park. We moved out there because they closed Patton Park down, really. Didn't play anymore much down there. But, I mean, a lot of these fellas that I played ball with, James Light in them, we always called him Red Man, but he was always the team captain for our team for Berkeley. And we played big tournaments. We'd play at every mill that had a team or would send a team. We played them in September, always Labor Day weekend. And we won probably half of the tournaments that we played in. We'd go to LaGrange, Georgia. We'd go to Lexington, North Carolina. We'd go to Corinth, Mississippi, because we have mills in that area, and we'd go play with them. And then we played tournaments here. We played the big tournaments here. And there's a plaque up there on the table and a trophy up there on the table that we won while we was here. But we had a big aluminum bat that had all the names and the years that the teams won. And I think we had 15 years. I played 15 years, I know, with the Berkeley softball team. And that's the uniform I'm wearing now, one of them. I had many more, but this was just one that happened to be in the dresser drawer. And I found it, and I said, well, I'll just put it on, because this is about Berkeley Park and going to make it a historic place, and I'm glad they're going to do that, because it's probably one of the oldest and one around in this area. It's still here. So I'm glad they're doing something with it anyway. And all these young kids that play here all the time, 13 to 15, my son played here, Ellison's son played here, a lot of these other fellas' sons played here. And it's quite a few good memories. Well, some of the teams we played here in baseball was Leicester, or Leicester, Cedar Cliff, it was Fletcher, Brickton, played J.C. Higgins brothers. That's some of them, Mills River, Etowah. All of each area around here had a team. A lot of them did. And we had quite a few teams. About 6 at the most, 6 to 8 at any one time that played. But we had quite a few fellas that come in here, like Wayne Golden and his brother Jerry. They went up and played pro ball. Poochie Corn played some year. He played some pro ball. Like Ellison said, like Wayne Fletcher, he went up and played a little bit. A lot of these fellas that played here played some pro ball at one time. But the big majority of us, we just played and had fun. I was playing one here with Berkeley softball, and the mill manager out of Corinth, Mississippi, had rounded first base, and I was pitching. I came over to, they threw the ball away. I come over to pick the ball up, and the mill manager went about halfway, and he come back to first base, and he jumped back into first base and hit the back of my leg, and broke an ankle. And I didn't get to play but 2 games, I think it was, in that tournament. But we won it. Berkeley won it. But I had a broke ankle over it. But that was one I especially remember. And everybody says, how you know it's broke? I said, well, I heard it pop. So I know it's broke. And then before I started playing over here, I was playing with the National Guard in Fort Jackson. We were playing against the Army team down there, and we was playing fast pitch. And a fellow come in the home, tried to steal home, and I went sketching, and I went up to catch the ball. I caught the ball, and when he come in, he slid and caught my elbow between my knee and his knee. And it swelled up real big, and I was playing high school ball at that time, senior in high school. And I couldn't quarterback because of that. And then Wayne Fletcher's brother quarterbacked that year for us in football at Indianville, and we won the conference there. And I had that problem. And I've had quite a few problems, but I still play ball. I still play with the seniors and the 75 and over. And we play at Jackson Park every Monday and Friday mornings at 10 o'clock. And I've been through 2 knee replacements. I got 2 plastic knees. I've got 6 bypasses and a stent a year ago or 2 years ago. And I've been playing on these plastic knees for 6, 7 years. And they're still in good shape. And I've had my shoulder fixed. And I've got 3 stainless steel screws in my right arm, but I still play. But I still have fun at it. And that's the name of the game, and I'm still above ground. The Lord's been good to me, and I can't grumble.
I was raised in the village. We moved into the village in 1944. I was 6 months old, and I lived in the village until I was 19 in November of 1963 when I was married. The memories of the ballpark, this ballpark was the centerpiece of our life here in the village for the young people especially. Our day would consist of baseball practice in the morning, a little dip in the rock quarry, which was not legal, but we did it anyway, and then down to the community pool, which they had for us, and then a trek back over to the ballpark to shag fly balls for the spinners. And the best memory I have are those days when the Berkeley Spinners, the men that played for the Spinners, were just a wonderful group of people. They mentored us, they coached us, they encouraged us. And a unique feature here, I think, is my dad, Harold Fletcher, played on the first team in 1948, and I, as a rising senior at Harrisville High School, played on the last team in 1961. But in between, there are so many great ball players that passed through this ballpark as a Berkeley Spinner. You had people like Mal Millette, who was a sports editor at Asheville Citizen-Times and had been in the Dodgers organization for several years and played as high as AAA. He was a left-handed pitcher. And I don't remember anybody in the league ever beating Mal Millette. They finally got together and voted that if you didn't play or work at the mill, you couldn't play, so that got rid of Mal Millette. But people like Ray Slider, Noah Good, and Dewey Honeycutt, Frank Pack, Bobby Sparks, Paul Nickel, all ball players that had played professional baseball, brought the Spinners up to a new level. We, as young boys, looked up to these men. They were our heroes. and they helped us every way that they could. And as I walked in the ballpark today, I guess it's been 25 years since I've been in this ballpark, and the good feelings and the memories just came back. The uniqueness of the village itself, being a part of the community and the camaraderie. You can see the interaction, the people who are here today that lived in the village and who had things to do with the ballpark. It's just an amazing fact. It was a good time at a good place that will never, ever be repeated. But my memories, I'll be 74 years old very soon, and my memories will be with me for the rest of my life. It's something I'm thankful for. One game that stands out for me was when I was playing with the Spinners. We were down in Greenville, South Carolina at Monaghan Mills. And of course, some of the guys had been injured, and I got a chance to play. I started at shortstop that night. And my first trip to the plate, of course, I looked like a little ragamuffin. I weighed about 150 pounds, and my uniform was just hanging off me. You could tell I was young. The catcher said, "All right, buddy, fastball right down the middle." And I thought to myself, oh yeah, fastball right down the middle. Boom, fastball right down the middle. He said, "I told you." He said, "Here comes another one." Sure enough. And I swung at this one, and I hit it over the center fielder's head. And I could run back in those days. I weighed 150 pounds. And I got an inside the park home run. So that was one of the highlights for me. But there are so many highlights that come to mind about the Bobby Sparks sliding into home plate against Dunedin. And the guy who was catching for Dunedin's name was June Raines, who later went on to coach at the University of South Carolina. Bobby cut him from his knee up to his groin. Spikes may have been just a little high, but you know, baseball was a tough game too. It wasn't just football. But Mal Millette pitching, the way he worked the batters, the stuff that he had, and Bill Holden, who was a left-handed pitcher. Bill could throw the ball hard when he wanted to, but he had a great changeup. And Harris Pryor, who coached at Edneyville for years and then went up to Tuscola. Harris Pryor played at Western Carolina University, and Harris was so strong and so big. He could pitch doubleheaders. In college, they played 7-inning games when they played a doubleheader. Harris could pitch both ends of the doubleheader. But Harris Pryor hit a ball down at Piedmont, South Carolina, and I would estimate that the ball went over 500 feet. And I'm not exaggerating at all. That's the longest ball. I played 2 years professional baseball in the Baltimore organization. That's the longest ball I ever saw hit. But he was just so strong. And for a young boy, I was a bat boy that night. It was just amazing to see a ball hit that far. And then he could throw the ball hard too. He was a pitcher. Seeing Noah Good actually just about call a home run down at Clinton, South Carolina. Just so many things like that. These guys were professionals. They could play. And one thing I'm thankful for, when we were kids and would come over to the ballpark in the afternoon for their practice to shag fly balls, they encouraged us. They might say, "Wayne, you might be better off if you got in front of that ball rather than trying to field it from the side." Just little hints like, always keep the ball in front of you. When I'm fielding ground balls, keep the butt up, the glove down. The glove will always come up faster than it'll go down. Things like that. Tip Massey, for instance. Tip Massey was a role model for all of us young boys. In all the years that I knew Tip Massey, I never heard him say one word of profanity. Gosh darn may have been his most exclamation, you would say. But as I said before, they were role models for us. They were mentors. it was just a good time and a good place to grow up, and I'm thankful for every minute of it.
I was lucky enough to play 70 through 72 before I went in the Army with the Dana Bucks, with Ellis and Justice and Tom and Dean Ward. They encouraged me after high school to come over here and play to see what baseball was really like instead of the high school game. So I rode the bench a lot. I couldn't match up with the caliber of ball player that was over here back in those days there. Yes, it probably was the stepping stone to me playing on a little bit more baseball and entering the world of softball, which I've played ever since then. I'm still playing, as Maurice and all the rest of them are. I was fortunate enough to have enough talent to play with this group of guys. They was unbelievable. When you go, Tom, my Uncle Tom, he would probably the best hitter out here. I saw him hit 4 and 5 home runs a game. I know one, he hit dead center field against Leicester. It went over the tree in center field, and was back over here in practice a couple days after it, and a couple of guys come out of the field down there that worked at Berkeley Mills and said they found the ball in their garden down there. And to measure it, it was 150 foot past the fence, so that ball went over about 550 foot. So it was unbelievable. And they brought the ball back to us with the red clay on it. So here's your ball. So there was some talent back there. Dean Epperson was probably one of the best shortstops I've ever played with in baseball or softball. He could literally catch the ball and throw it as fast as anybody. And if you was playing first base, you had to put extra padding in your glove because it would absolutely make it red. So we had some good ball players. There was unbelievable talent there. Dean Epperson, home run hitter, and Tom and my Uncle Dean. When you play a team, they couldn't walk anybody until I come up, and then they'd walk them to get to me. So we had a real good team, Terry, back in those days. The travel, you'd go out to Leicester or South Carolina to play these other teams, and the fellowship is what it was all about before and after the game. Once you cross the lines, you didn't have no friends on the team on the other side. But we'd go eat, and I saw my 2 uncles eat about 3 or 4 chickens, and we went to an all-you-could-eat restaurant one time, and they asked us to leave. So, we was pretty good-sized guys. I mean, I'm probably 6'4", and right now 245, and I'm a midget compared to those other guys. So they're just tremendous ball players. The biggest one I think really stood out in my mind, other than the Indianapolis Clowns when we beat those, was games that, you always stand out the first game you ever played over here. I was shocked when they said that I was starting in right field because I never thought I was a caliber to be a starter on this team. We was playing Higgs and Young, Flan Lamb, and Lynn Lamb and that bunch, and I got my first hit. We beat them 16-2. My Uncle Tom hit 3 home runs that game, and my Uncle Dean hit 2, and Dean Epperson, he hit 4 home runs. So, and the worst thing about it, I was batting in front of them, and it seemed like I was only on base at one time. But that was the game when my Uncle Tom was pitching. He would pitch right-handed to the right-handed batters, and he had one of those reversible gloves, and he'd pitch left-hand to left-handed batters in the same game. That was a feat that you didn't see anybody do back then, and he could hit left or right-handed home runs. He's the one probably encouraged me to keep on playing ball. He said, you had talent. He said, I just didn't know how to use it. But he was my inspiration to keep on playing ball more and more. And I think, ball will keep you in your health in pretty good, other than your knee. But there were some more games that we was playing in Reynolds High School one time, playing Cedar Cliff over there. Leicester in a doubleheader. And we had one game that was 1-0 that we won, and another game that we played Cedar Cliff, we beat them 1-0, and in the third game we got beat 1-0. So there was only 3 runs scored in 3 games. And it all due to the caliber of pitching that we had. I mean, when we won, I think we had 4 hits or 5 hits that game, and the home run Tom hit was the only run we scored in both games. He hit 2 home runs. And in the game we got beat, he didn't hit a home run. We blamed it on him for losing that game. But we had Terry Bell. He could run them down in the outfield. Tom, the Cubs wanted him to sign a contract with him, but he got married and had a kid and couldn't go. And there were several guys that could play professional baseball in this league that scouts never did see them to go and play. Yeah, we're talking about 30 years ago. Now, Maurice Jones, you've already interviewed him. He can remember things about ants crawling on the ground. He was a good second baseman, could turn a double play back in the days. But I was one of the youngest. I'm probably the youngest player out here, and I'm 65 that played in the league before the second generation come in. So I can't remember that. I can remember games of hits and stuff, but every game that you play is totally unbelievable because of the talent that was on the fields on both sides of the diamond. Higgs and Young played, and they had, we feel like back those days, they had the older generation. And they was competitive. They would hit the ball flying, and Lynn, you couldn't ever get them out, but they had some more players on there that we felt like they had the bottom of the lineup that, you know, that I don't think they won maybe 1 or 2 games the whole year. But basically all this here was fellowship. I mean, we'd sit down after the games and we'd all sit down and pray. And that's what the big thing was, is the fellowship and knowing that the Lord's there to help you.
Bobby Sparks is my dad, and I grew up here in this park. Actually, I have some of my best childhood memories right here in this park, sitting in the stands cheering for my dad as he played for the Spinners. He was one of the original players and played with them all along, worked at Berkeley Mills. Also in this park, they had company picnics. And I can remember as a child, we loved to come, and they had all the hot dogs, lemonade, and ice cream that you could eat, and Shetland ponies you could ride. So some of my best childhood memories are right here in this park, will always be in my heart. So I'm so happy and blessed to be here today to share with everyone that's here that the park is going on the National Historical Register. And I live here in Hendersonville, and am just blessed to be here today. My mom was always after us because we always were here for all the home games with my dad playing, and with my mom, Connie Sparks, and I had 3 brothers, Ricky Sparks, David Sparks, and Jimmy. We were always on our best behavior. So I'm so glad the park is being preserved for other generations to be here and enjoy the beauty of it all.
I married my husband in 1950. We moved into the village in 1951. And in 1966, I was approached to work at Balfour Post Office. And the former clerk had moved with her husband to Mexico. And the postmaster at that time had asked me if I would be interested in being a clerk. So I was kind of a little bit nervous about having to take that big test you have to work for the Postal Service. And I had to be there on a Monday morning after I signed the paper, and I did okay. So I was employed as the clerk. Then a tragedy happened. The postmaster was hit by a car downtown Hendersonville and died as a result. So after that, I served as officer in charge for several months, and then I was appointed in 1966 as the postmaster. Well, we had a lot of interesting people coming and going. A lot of the people that worked at Berkeley kept a post office box there. We had 225 post office boxes, and the people came and go, and then their families will also get mail in the post office. And the school always got their mail. Balfour School got their mail at Balfour Post Office. And then as time went on, a lot of things changed, and then I had to get somebody to serve in the position that I formerly had. And her name was Geraldine Sexton, and she was a very good employee. Her husband also worked at Berkeley. A few times we'd have some odd things happen. I had one gentleman that every time when the apples were picked, he would bring a bushel of apples and ask if he could mail that bushel of apples to somebody in Virginia. So we enjoyed, I'd say, well, we'll put it on the truck, and if it comes back, we'll know they weren't going to mail it. And then another fella decided he was helping somebody on an old car, and he said, could he mail a bumper from that post office? And I said, well, if we can get it on the scale to weigh it and put stamps on it, then we'll see. And it was gone and delivered the very next day. So there were things like that, and then it was a really friendly type job because we were located in a building called Gady Hall. Originally, the post office was in the back of one of the little country stores. They had a little row of stores up and down the main street there at Berkeley. And then they moved it into the big building called Gady Hall. And I worked until 1991. The management came over and asked me, they were ready to tear down all the buildings. And he said, when will you retire? And I said, well, I have to work 25 years to get a good retirement. And they said, well, we won't touch this building until you retire. And then they gave me a 25-year pin from Berkeley. So I enjoyed it. We had a good relationship with the company, and my husband retired from Kimberly-Clark too. When my family lived on Wall Street. And then when they were ready to tear down all the buildings, we had started building a house, of our own. And so we moved out. I think it was in 1968 is when we moved from the village. And we'd come for the ball games, and we enjoyed that.
My connection with Balfour, the community and the school, began in 1937 when I attended Balfour in first grade. I went to school there for until spring 1946, finished 8th grade. Loved the school. J.M. Foster was my principal at that time. Anyway, there was a connection between the school and the mill. We always had a close connection. Going back, the school actually was built a white sideboard school in 1909. And my mom actually went to that school. Her name was Naomi Johnson. And doing some research, we found out 3rd grade, she made the honor roll. I was thrilled when we ran into that bit of information. I never knew that. But anyway, let's see, where was I? The school, I went on, graduated high school, Mills River, and then never dreaming when I was there that I would later become principal in 1970. And I was there for 21 years until 1991. But I love the school and the community. One of the neatest things we did was turkey dinners all those years. And the turkey dinners were, we would serve 1,000 meals. The PTO would do that. The ladies in the lunchroom would cook the food, teachers helped serve it. but we would have 250 people from the mill order second shift meals. So we would box those up and bring them over there. And we were able to get paper products to use with the school. A great connection there. The kids from the mill went to Balfour School. And I can remember as a kid, the principal was always getting after somebody, for the train would block the trail, which went right through Hunter Chevrolet. And the kids were sometimes daredevil enough to crawl under the train. But he was always getting after somebody for that, because some of the little girls would always tell on the boys that did that, which is pretty neat, I thought. But anyway, we became accredited by the school did, by the Southern Association of Elementary Schools early on. To get ready for that, we had a school librarian added. And by the time the elementary school moved to Clear Creek in 2004, well, when I retired in 1991, we had 650 kids in that little school. It just grew and grew. We had a reputation of being the best elementary school in the county. The other thing I remember about this site, where the Berkeley Mill was, I believe it was built in 1921 by Smythe. They wanted to keep the name Smythe, but the Balfour had already been established, and so the post office wouldn't change the name Balfour. But the first industry here was the quarry, and the stone from the quarry was mined and used in the Biltmore estate. And it was difficult. The stone was mined, oxen carts would bring it to the railroad, and then they would load those things and take them over to Biltmore on the train there. But anyway, a close association with the school, knew the kids, didn't live in the village, but knew all the kids, later had them in school. Of course, not sure when the houses were torn down, but by the time I became principal, I don't remember any houses there. So the people settled in the community. But the community has always been a giving community, very progressive and upscale, and always enjoyed our relationship with the mill here, through changes and all of that. A lot of the people coming with Kimberly Clark would come from Wisconsin, I believe, Nina, and they'd had their kids in parochial schools, but they had heard about what a great school it was, so they brought their kids to Balfour to school. Well, anyway, I know a lot of the people who've been involved here, played baseball, all of that sort of thing. I think that's about what I need to say, except there's a Presbyterian children's home here. The quarry was from the 1890s and closed after, I believe, as a quarry, maybe 4 or 5 years later. But the first site here, where the Rhodes family later lived, was a 2-story house. It was a Presbyterian orphanage. And that orphanage closed later, I think during the Depression era, when the kids were all moved to Black Mountain. Anyways, hope this information will bring back some memories for some people. Thank you very much.
I always lived next door to the Berkeley Mill. At one time I was a barber, and I bought C.T. Hoy's barbershop in the village in 1966. And we had a mill village and a mill barbershop and a store and a post office down there at that time. They were about 100 houses in the mill village, and it was a pretty central area for trade, I guess, for the area. Even outside the area, a lot of people came there. And my dad was a barber. He owned a barber shop in 7th Avenue for about 30 years. And I worked barber business going under him and went to school. And before I bought the shop here. And I stayed there until they tore the shop down in '69. They started building onto the mill and needed those spaces for expansion. They were a couple years that I worked in different areas, and then I worked in construction for a little while, 2 or 3 years. Then I decided I'd go back and work in the mill. They promised me a job there if I ever wanted one, so I took them up on it a few years later, and I worked in the mill for 30 years. I was a mountain home fireman. We helped start Mountain Home Fire Department, which served this whole area, still does. And a result of that, I went to work in the mill, and they hired me in as assistant fire chief also. I was assistant fire chief in the mill and worked in the fire brigade for 30 years the whole time I was there also. We had a lot of connections through the village. Our wife's family history has worked at the mill sometime or another, even 30 or 40 years before I went to work there. So family's been connected through Berkeley for years, and the whole community. Well, the whole area was kind of connected. Not just the community, it was outflowing way around the community. But everybody sometime or another worked at Berkeley Mill, same way. It was one of the older factories. It started in 1924. Kimberly Clark bought it in 1946. And at one time, I guess the high part, they probably had 1,200 people working there. It went, I guess there's probably 300 people working up there now. But it's a high-tech plant. Everything is high technology. And biggest part of their product now goes in Huggies baby diapers. It's a plastic product that goes in Huggies baby diapers. I worked in the shipping for the last 15 years up there, and that's what we done. We shipped unloaded trucks and loaded trucks back, coming and going out of the plant, and worked in the warehouse.
Preservation Commission for all their efforts towards this event and all their due diligence to get this nationally recognized. Also want to mention the efforts put forth by our Public Works Department. As you can see, the field is immaculate. They've called for good weather, and I think we're going to have a grand event. There's a little surprise. I don't think folks know about it, but Ben and Sue Green, we have complimentary hot dogs and drinks and Cracker Jacks by Ingalls. So keep that in mind. Yeah. And at this point, I would like to introduce our Honorable Mayor Volk to say a few words. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mark. So glad to have everybody out here for this special occasion. Any town that's been around for 170 years has some historic buildings, homes, but I don't think there are very many that have a historic ball field. This is something that we can be very proud of, something unique to this community. And we're, as the city, we're glad to be able to keep it up, to keep it available for the groups that do use it for their games. It's still a living part of our history. It's going to go on as it is. And thanks to all the people involved with getting it getting it recognized as on the National Register of Historic Places, especially, as Mark said, our Historic Preservation Group, Public Works, and various other staff members. And so we do have an official plaque that is going to be posted outside for everyone to see it. And this says, Berkeley Mills Ballpark placed on the National Register of Historic Places by the United States Department of the Interior. September 19th, 2016 is when it was officially recognized, and today it's finally being dedicated. We have a number of special guests here today. If you could stand or wave your hand when I call your name. Patrick Gallagher, the author of The Berkeley Spinners, A Baseball History. Right over here. Dewey Honeycutt, a former spinner, right next to him. Jerry Wisner, also a former spinner with the 1961 team, over here. Wayne Fletcher, also on that team. I know Wayne's here. There, oh, down there, okay. We probably also should remember someone who is not here. Luke Rindle, who is deceased. He was the general manager of Berkeley Mills, and he was the one who actually got the ballpark constructed. See, because it was part of the Berkeley Mills for many years, and then Kimberly Clark, who then donated it to the city. Could all the former spinners or anyone who ever played on this field, if you'd raise your hand? Okay, we got quite a few folks here. Wonderful. Glad to see all of you. Also have some special remarks from Dan Barber. Dan, you want to come and tell us a little more?
Well, I sit here and look at Coram Smith sitting right behind catchers. At many of the ball games I witnessed out here for 6 years, that's exactly where I sat. I wanted to see every pitch by every pitcher and every batter swing, so I got the inside scoop before we even had to play the opposition. My name is Dan Barber. I'm a former player out here in the 50s, and I'm proud to say that I was able to manage a team out here for 6 years. I'd like to praise God for this beautiful day and this beautiful facility that we have. I'd like to thank the city of Hendersonville and Kimberly Clark for presenting this to us. And if Kevin Rhodes happens to be here, he's the one with the city that's in charge of maintaining this beautiful facility. And I know how hard he's worked to do that. I played, like I say, in the 50s. I was able to coach with my first baseball coach. My first baseball coach was Bill Orr, who's supposed to be here. And after that, I came to Berkeley Park, where I coached for 8 years. I would like to thank the former sponsors of the teams that I had, from T-ball to 8, 9, and 10-year-old ball, 11, 12-year-old ball, and then the 13, 14, 15s. In fact, we went a step further and did 17, 18. So we went the whole gamut with these young men. But that was Shoney's, Elks Lodge, and Justice Enterprises. I was fortunate enough to manage the 1990 15-year-old All-Stars, and one of my co-coaches was Bob Stiles. His son Junior is here, that signed with Texas. And I hope that he'll be out here to spend some time with each of you. This 15-year-old team got to play the state championship here. And we've got a plaque over here on this wall that shows a picture of those young men. And I'm proud to say that the city of Hendersonville supported us. We had to board all these young people from across the state. And they were here for about a week, so it was quite an endeavor. But we were the last 15-year-old team to win All-Stars. So going back to 1990, that's a long time. Our son Gregory Barber, who is a realtor on the coast of North Carolina now, was on that team, and he was also on Gary Rivers's. I hope, is Gary out here? Where is Gary? Here's Coach Rivers over here that won the state championship for Hendersonville High School that same year, 1990. And we were fortunate enough that our son got to pitch the last inning of that game. And so we've got a plaque commemorating Hendersonville High School's time out there. I see several people in the crowd, and I would like to pay tribute to Peggy Johnson, whose husband Clarence Johnson sort of got modern day Babe Ruth baseball going for back in the 70s and the 80s. And I know that we have had several people that represent Hendersonville, and the only one I see in the crowd is Junior Stiles. Junior, come on out. I want them to see. Come on out here. I want them to see how big a boys we grow in Henderson County. These aren't little fellas now. Imagine him at 12 years old, and he lives down in Georgia and is a manager of a Dick's Sporting Goods, but he brought fame to East High where he played, and then eventually went on and played with the Texas Rangers. Outstanding. And so he is one of about 4 that we know of. Quincy Foster I don't see here. He's the only one I can say that ever played for Gary and me as well, and he did make it with the Marlins. And I understand that Joey Rhodes and Alex Talbert, who were part of that all-star team, also got to sign professional contracts. I'd ask all previous managers or coaches just to stand that are sitting in here. Whatever age group you did, just stand and let everybody see the tribute and the work they do. We've got Mr. Street here from Indianville who's continuing to do it. And these other gentlemen right here. Yes, sir. And your name?
I'm going to introduce him.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'd like all the mamas of the players to stand because nobody knows how much sacrifice these people put on. So if you're a mother of a son that played out here any of those years, if you'd just stand. When it's all said and done, we look at what has been accomplished. We look at our young men today and see how they have matured and learned from their baseball experiences. We have passed the torch, and we ask them to pay it forward for the generations to come. If anybody asks me my best memories of Berkeley Park or any of the other sports activities going up from 8 years old all the way through, it is such a privilege to meet and know the young men of Henderson County from all the different schools. If I'd never done this, I'd have known the Hendersonville crowd, but I wouldn't known East or West or North. And so not only did you get to know them as competitors and great athletes, you got to follow them through their high school careers and college careers. And now when you see them on the street, they know who you are. We might have changed, but they hadn't. But it's such a privilege to be able to give to the youth of Henderson County. And I just hope that they will. I know, Junior, you're coaching the team now, aren't you? Isn't that right? And here's Bob Stiles. This is the father, the matriarch of the Stiles dynasty. Drove all the way from Bakersville this morning. He was a coach on that all-star team. But again, we appreciate each and every one of you being out here. We appreciate the facility and the city of Hendersonville. It's a great blessing for the city to have this and for all of our children and grandchildren to go forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for your special connection to this field and a little bit of the history. If you would now please stand, we will have the presentation of the colors performed by the West Henderson High School Junior ROTC under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Randy Lytle, retired, and First Sergeant Joseph Kennedy, retired. And that will be followed by singing of the national anthem by Kate Boyette, a 6th grader at Hendersonville Middle School. And it is possible as these ceremonies are going on, we may our flyover may occur. So it's going to be here in about 5 minutes, so we'll see how our timing goes.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Kate. And thank you to the West Henderson High School Junior ROTC. We will have our game starting shortly, and the first pitch for that game is going to be thrown out by the Western North Carolina Independent League manager from 1970 to 1976, Ellison Justice. And he is coming up here. But before, I'm not going to throw it, I'm sorry. I was asked if anyone who either played on the team or was in some way involved could come out on the field for a group photograph before we actually start the game. So anyone who feels a connection to the field, please come on out here so we can get that. And then Mr. Justice will start the game.